The Lord of the Rings. Yes. Lord of the Rings movie review. It's been out for like fucking long. I think the first one was released in like 2001. Have you seen it? You haven't seen it? Dude, why haven't you seen it? It's been out for fucking 10 years. I mean, this movie was fucking epic. The last one was released like 2003? 2003? Yeah, end of 2003. Brilliant movies. Personal perspective, yes, but the movies are generally fucking great. Like, if you haven't seen that shit, there's something wrong with you. Like, can you remember that scene in The Water Boy when Bobby's talking shit and and there's all them people trying to beat the shit out of him and they're mad at him, and then you see Rob Schneider in the background going, "You can do it! Cut his fucking head off!" In the last one of Lord of the Rings, there's a guy talking shit, and Aragorn just cuts his fucking head off. Like, he's talking shit, and then he's just like, "Yeah, woof!" And then you know that if the guy could still talk, he'd be like, "Oh, blooming heck!" And then, like, that's what everybody wants to do. How can you not relate to when someone's pissing you off? You want to cut their fucking head off. Like, literally, not even like in a jokey way. Like, sometimes if I'm in the shop and an old person pushes in front of me, thinking because they're old they can skip in front, I just want to have. I wish I had a tin opener to open the tin of tuna in my trolley, so I could use that as a serrated edge to cut their fucking head off. Just keep chiseling and chiseling, and then put their head on the conveyor belt and get there and swipe it for club card points. You know. This movie is quite epic. The Hobbit didn't quite live up to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but it couldn't. Possibly, no way in hell. Just the format, the story is better. The action is better. Just everything about Lord of the Rings was better than the Hobbit. There's no way the Hobbit could have ever fucking measured up to it. So basically, the story, the Lord of the Rings, is about. It's different characters, but the main point of the story is one ring was made to rule other rings. 3 rings were given to the elves, 7 was given to the dwarfs, and 9 were given to men, doomed to die. Then this deceiver, Sauron, who's like a great spirit who takes human form, he created a ring to control all of the rings, and he turned the rings of the 9 men, and the men became his servants, the Nazgul or the Ringwraiths. Then they're like these cloaked up black. They kind of look like Voldemort in Philosopher's Stone, where Hagrid was like, "Oh, Voldemort's gathered some followers, so I'd bring them over to the dark side." They look like that, and it is fucking creepy. I watched it as a kid, and it generally made me woohoo. There does something about them, the way they speak, and they kind of speak like Nagini from Harry Potter, speaking, "Give up the halfling shelf." Like, speaking in fucking parcel tongue and shit. It's really, everything about them, you don't see their face, it's just dark. Like the ghost of Christmas past on a horse. That's what they are. And they're basically sent out to capture the ring, whoever holds it. What happened in the old days was Sauron had a war with, and the men and the elves formed a last alliance, and they fought him on the battlefield, and Isildur is a soldier. He cut off Sauron's ring off his hand, and Sauron kind of spontaneously combusted, and his enemies fled. His army fled and were killed and captured and slaughtered and shit. And basically, Isildur took the ring, and instead of destroying it in Mount Doom, where it was created, the one place on Earth it could be destroyed, he kept it for himself as a trinket. And because of the soul of Sauron still being inside this ring, hello Harry Potter Horcruxes, a little bit of your soul being stuck inside, it corrupted Isildur. But it always wants to get back to its master, so it'll never serve anyone other than him. So, like, Isildur had called this ring his precious. And the ring kind of betrayed him. He dove into the river when some orcs ambushed him, and the ring slipped off his finger, obviously, so he died, and it just kept jumping from one person to the next person. This guy Gollum held it for years, Smeagol held it for hundreds of years, and then it was found by Hobbit Bilbo, who left it to his nephew Frodo. The story is about Frodo. The Lord of the Rings is based primarily on Frodo, whereas The Hobbit is based on Bilbo. It's Frodo's job to get this ring to Mount Doom because the forces of darkness are searching for him. This is really corny shit, but it's amazing. They're searching for the ring bearer, and they're going to slaughter him and take the ring back, and then Sauron will regain power and throw all the world into darkness again. Even though he was beaten the first time, so all it take really is to cut off his finger again, but hello. Would have made the story a lot shorter. So Frodo takes his gardener Sam, who's a really little friend, and his two cousins Merry and Pippin, or one cousin, whatever. And they basically need to go to Mount Doom, and the whole movie, all three books are based on the journey from Hobbiton, where they live, to Mount Doom. And loads of things happen, like they meet at Rivendell with Elrond, who's like the master of the elves, and Gandalf, who's like Dumbledore but with a staff and not a wand. And if you ever saw the trailer and saw Gandalf like, "You shall not pass," and he strikes the ground and the Balrog falls and is like, "Balrog got dropped like a bitch by Gandalf's blood," and you didn't go and see that movie, there's something fucking wrong with you. Because you see that, you see fucking they fighting orcs and goblins and loads of shit and Uruk-hai. Like there's like three or four battle scenes in the movie, and they're fucking good. You're like, wow, that's kind of cool actually. Some of the special effects they look a bit cartoony, but that was just a different time. The movie itself is fucking great. You can get into it, you get amped up. For some people with a short attention span or a little thing with no brains, you poor bastards, you probably won't sit through it. You'll feel it's boring, and it's like Dungeons and Dragons, the movie for nerds, when it's not. It's more about friendship and taking responsibility, and it's not so much about, oh, let's get this ring and go past all these magical creatures and wizards and shit. It's not World of Warcraft, the live action film. So different things happen. They form a fellowship to get the ring to Mount Doom. That disbands, and it's just Frodo and Sam going off, and then Legolas, who's an elf, Gimli, who's a dwarf, and Aragorn, who's a man. Yes, it is corny. It is that there's one man, one elf, and one dwarf. It's not like a fucking porno or the first line of a bad joke. An elf, a man, and a dwarf walk into a bar, kind of shit. What is really worth watching, just because you see these friendships, and it's a deep movie. It can make you laugh at times, and it's just really an interesting thing. The battle was good, and you do feel a genuine sense of urgency and fear. Some things come up, and you feel just as scared as the character would feel, or you feel a bit nervous, or just like, shit, I'm creeped out a bit. Whereas the book, here's the thing. The thing about the book is it's very vivid. Tolkien was very vivid with how he was explaining his imagery. But sometimes, like, you'll read the book and then you're damn near falling a fucking sleep because everything is so poetic. Like, they'll be sitting by a fire and then they'll start singing a song, and the song will have multiple stanzas and it'll go on for 2 pages, and it's just because you don't know how the beat goes. Sometimes it's hard to like read a poem and imagine how it was, how they were singing it, or sometimes it's not. But sometimes there's fucking poems littered everywhere, like, oh, nothing's happened for a while, let's just put a song in to pass the time because there's nothing else to write about. Or they'll sit around and they'll talk, and it's old language, or they'll use really complicated words with like fucking letters you'd never use in that word because they're made up. It's really well thought. Tolkien created this whole world and this whole language, and he created the elf languages and these places and these races, and he did it so in depth. It was amazing. He created this world. It's like the Harry Potter world that was created. So in depth, where everything's covered, there's something for everything. But sometimes you'll read in the book and you're just getting tired because nothing was happening, or they're walking and talking and you're getting bored, or you think something interesting is going to happen and something interesting nearly does happen. And then they go into someone's house for a traptor. Or something good's going to happen, they escape. And they just pay a chapter in different places. Like one chapter in Hobbiton, one in a bar, one somewhere else, and it's just you're like, come on, get to some killing. It's building up to it, but sometimes it's just a little slow. The language is kind of annoying, the imagery is too vivid, and sometimes you just want to hear, and then Frodo stabbed him 16 times in the face. You know, sometimes you're waiting for that and you don't get it, and it's disappointing. It's a good thing. If you like books and you like action, it's a good thing to read. genuinely, it drags on a bit too long. Just the whole experience. You don't watch The Lord of the Rings, you experience The Lord of the Rings. It's got some fantastic imagery in the book, but sometimes it's just pansy, boring shit, which is really sad because I love it. But it explains something, and I didn't know what the fuck it means. I didn't know what it meant 10 years ago, and I don't know what it means now, because it's just that complicated. There's all these names of people, and some names are similar, so you think that's someone else. Or you hear a name and it sounds familiar, but because it's wrapped up so much bullshit in between when it's last mentioned the person, you forgot who the fuck it is. So you have to go back and have to go for 100 pages to find out who the fuck he's talking about. The book is great. It's really in depth. It's got colourful language. It's amazing experience to read it. The movie is a fucking great experience. It's really about whether you're a visual person or a mental person. If you read the book, you can have some amazing visuals in your head, you know, in that free fucking special effects lab in your mind. You can see all this shit. The movies, everything's just, the things are at a massive scale, armies at a massive scale, battle scenes are epic, there's some funny lines in, there's some shit you will be quoting to your friends kind of lines. Someone, if you work at the cinema, you know, you work at the movies, someone tries to get past you, you can say, "You shall not pass," and stamp your foot, and they will probably laugh and say, "Oh, I can't stay mad at you, Gandalf." You know, so yeah, if you haven't seen it yet, you should probably go and check it out before you die. It's worth a watch once through, you know. So, have a good day, and as always, see you later, you bastards.